Good morning. Today's journal topic is optimal management of acute coronary syndromes in the era of COVID-19, taken from British Heart Journal, published in the month September 2020. Myself presenter Dr. Seetala and moderator is Dr. Aditi. Introduction. As we all know, COVID had an unprecedented impact on healthcare systems, leading to reduction in the health-seeking behavior and reduced attendances for cardiac emergencies too. This has led to cardiac complications in patients with underlying heart diseases or cardiac risk factors. Cardiovascular care during the pandemic, therefore, should remain a priority to mitigate the significant morbidity and mortality from both the indirect and direct effects of COVID-19. COVID has impacted the patients indirectly through the required change in healthcare resource allocation and the need for social distancing. Cardiovascular concerns in COVID-19. Mechanisms of myocardial injury are poorly understood. This may involve ACE2 receptor expression within the myocardium and coronary vessels, thus triggering local inflammation, hypercoagulopathy, and thrombosis, causing acute coronary syndrome and local ischemia. This is type 1 MI. There could also be ischemia from respiratory failure and hypoxia in patients with underlying coronary disease, and therefore a rise in troponin is noted. This is type 2 MI due to mismatch between the oxygen supply and demand. COVID has also increased the incidence of pulmonary embolism due to elevated pulmonary pressures with RV strain. There could also be immune-mediated inflammatory response driving secondary myocarditis, causing acute heart failure and multi-organ failure. Myocarditis due to COVID generally mimics an ST elevation MI, and it is called a STEMI mimicker with similar ECG changes, and it can also lead to Takotsubo style cardiomyopathy due to increased sympathetic drive and lead to cardiac arrhythmias. Acute coronary syndromes in COVID era. The factors remain true even in the COVID era with the additional assessment of infective status of the patients and appropriate protection of the staff. Use of anticoagulants is warranted given the thrombotic risk, and ischemic events may be reduced by the addition of rivaroxaban 2.5 mg BD. However, there are ongoing studies regarding this in the COVID era, and they're assessing the usage of this rivaroxaban. The principal issue is to distinguish between type 1 MI events from type 2 MI events. Type 2 MI events are troponin elevation due to arrhythmias, heart failure, myocarditis, pericarditis, or systemic illnesses. Clinical assessment, serial ECG changes, and troponin measurement are key to the diagnosis of ACS. In the context of COVID, conservative management may be appropriate for non-true ACS. Echocardiography plays a major role, suggesting a typical ACS if there is an RWMA present. Since echocardiography is an intimate examination, so the person performing this test should be in a PPE. Patients should wear masks during scanning, assessment, and treatment. Reperfusion for STEMI. For STEMI, the preferred treatment option is percutaneous primary coronary intervention. The National Health Service and the British Cardiovascular Intervention Society recommends PPCI as treatment of choice for STEMI even in the COVID era. Since performing PPCI can involve a cardiac arrest, those performing this procedure should be advocated in full PPE, shielding the members of staff at highest risk, that is, with those with lung conditions, elderly more than 65 years, should be redeployed elsewhere so that they get to perform non-patient facing activities since they are at a higher risk. PPCI reperfusion should be within 120 minutes of symptom onset. And if the patient reaches a PPCI capable center, it should be within 60 minutes of arrival at the center. Observational data suggests that COVID patients are at a greater burden of thrombus and clot burden. There are higher rates of multivessel thrombosis and stent thrombosis in these patients. Also noted are higher rates of aspiration thrombectomy and greater need for GP2B3A and higher doses of intraprocedural heparin. All these have been reported in COVID patients. Prolonged hospitalization and greater mortality are noted. A dedicated cathedral lab is recommended and all possible equipment should be within the reach of the staff so they don't have to keep going and fetching equipment and during this time potentially spread the virus. A designated area should be there for donning and doffing PPE. All team members should have sufficient PPE with FF2 or FFP3 mask, gown, goggles and shoe covers. Since PP remains scarce, some may choose to limit PP usage to operators only. But whenever CPR has to be performed, since it is an aerosol generating procedure, it should be performed only by staff in PPE. Negative pressure facilities are recommended, but since these are expensive, the alternative is to deep clean after each and every case. And when multiple STEMI patients are arriving, then risk assessment should be performed. And whenever there is inevitable delay, thrombolysis should be considered. Thrombolysis for STEMI. Challenges in transport for critically unwell patients. For example, a patient on NIV, the challenge is to transfer the patient safely, and with aerosolized secretions, there's a significant threat to staff. Although intubated patients have closed circuits, the challenge is to transfer in a timely manner. Fulminant COVID patients may be unable to lie flat and be unable to tolerate an invasive angioplasty. So for these patients, we have to consider early thrombolysis. And the greatest value is within 1 hour of pain onset. For thrombolysis, fibrin-specific agents should be used like alteplase or tenecteplase. Tenecteplase preferred because a single bolus dose is sufficient and a single bolus dose would reduce the need for close nursing contact. However, there are concerns over bleeding risk in the context of COVID myocarditis. However, despite thrombolysis, a quarter of patients will not reperfuse and still require facilitated PCI. So whenever a patient comes, we need to urgently discuss with a senior interventional cardiologist. Uh, Rapid communication is essential and there should be documentation on why we have considered thrombolysis and the system constraints that mandated it. Upfront decisions have to be taken and subsequent treatment for those in which ST segments do not sufficiently resolve despite thrombolysis. And immediate steps have to be taken for safe transfer to cath lab. Patients achieving reperfusion should be considered for invasive angiography once the patient becomes stable. Unique issues regarding ACS in the COVID-19 era. COVID is a STEMI mimic, which means there are severe ST elevations, but the coronaries are unobstructed on angiography. The mechanism for this still remains unclear. It may be attributed to myocarditis or Takotsubo type response to overwhelming inflammation. Echocardiography assists in diagnosis of a global myocarditis, but angio is still advocated to avoid missing a true coronary occlusion. Another unique issue was a delayed attendance. As the pandemic evolved, a global reduction in ACS admissions has been noted. This is because stay at home was popularized slogan. Patients also avoided hospitals because they fear contracting the virus. Also, chest pain was thought to be a part of COVID-19. Globally, there was 20 to 40% reduction in STEMI presentations. So those attending also presented late and they had significantly longer door to balloon times with longer times of assessment in ERs, longer times for staff to prepare PPE and potentially longer procedure times due to increased clot burden, disease complexity or the need for respiratory support. So overall late presentations for STEMI have increased. Mechanical complications such as septal defects or ventricular rupture have been reported. It is expected that the incidence of heart failure may rise due to this late presentation with ACS in future. Novel pathways and new ways of working. Minimize the length of stay. to reduce the likelihood of patients acquiring de novo coronary infection from other patients in the hospital, minimize the length of stay in early perfusion, if feasible, for uncomplicated MI to discharge within 24 hours of admission. As elective care has been curtailed, cath labs have the capacity for rapid turnaround and retail access has permitted early discharge. Bedside point of care echography can provide the LV assessment. Short period of rhythm monitoring in low risk patients with uncomplicated PCI and early discharge is recommended. Low risk patients with low gray scores and small troponin rises should be stratified, and if appropriate, early urgent angio can be considered on an outpatient basis without inpatient stays. Maximal antiplatelet therapy and appropriate counseling is required in these low risk patients. Clustering of patients. Wherever inevitable, hospitals to develop a clearly demarcated zones to reflect the likelihood of viral cross-contamination. But delays in viral diagnosis can mean apparently well but infected and shedding patients can enter clean zones. This is one thing which has to be figured out. Surgical disease. Those patients requiring CABG. Early in the pandemic, all elective surgeries were cancelled to reduce the impact on intensive care facilities. This has evolved into allowing urgent surgery once discussed with a multidisciplinary team, but in a limited number of centers. So MDT should be performed early and ideally daily to minimize uncertainty and duration of inpatient stay. PCI should be preferred wherever possible because surgical disease can be a complex and additional care and attention will be necessary when performing PCI with consideration of adjunctive technologies. ACS phenotypes in COVID era. So first one is classical ACS with undiagnosed COVID found on routine testing on admission. These patients will be maybe asymptomatic COVID positive, unclear if they are infective or not. So while treating patients, PP is always mandated. Patients with higher risk of and NSTEMI, that is dynamic ECG changes and elevated trough, are best treated with revascularization wherever possible. Second phenotype is classical COVID features with concomitant true STEMI. Thrombolysis to be considered when patient cannot receive PCI in a timely manner. So decisions for thrombolysis should be senior led and in conjunction with tertiary PCI centers as facilitated PCI may be required. Angiography prior to discharge is desirable and should be performed once the patient is stable and has recovered from COVID. Severe third phenotype is severe COVID with STEMI mimic. Here the STEMI could be due to myocarditis and does not equate to coronary occlusion. The presence of myocarditis is a significant risk factor and equals very poor outcome. Consider advanced hemodynamic support with percutaneous ventricular assist devices or extracorporeal membrane oxygenation in these patients who are very sick. Conclusions. Prompt and early revascularization to be considered wherever feasible, with appropriate PPE advocated at all times. These remain the default treatment approach for patients with ACS in the COVID era. Critically unwell patients with STEMI without on-site catheter lab facilities or too unstable for transfer should be considered for early thrombolysis and activation of facilitated PCI if and when necessary. Similar studies, effect of COVID-19 pandemic on STEMI, presentations and in-hospital outcomes. This article talks about reduction in STEMI admissions. They observed a striking change in presentation and prognostic indicators, delayed presentations, and they found that patients with STEMI had a significant worse left ventricular ejection fraction than before the COVID outbreak, which could point towards increased future mortality and morbidity. Another article, the obstacle course of reperfusion for STEMI in the COVID-19 pandemics. So this article talks about how COVID has represented an unprecedented challenge for healthcare systems and has negatively affected time-dependent care in acute cardiovascular conditions such as STEMI. So here the examples of two cities one is in Italy and another one in Spain, have been described, and how patients were affected due to late presentations and late treatment. Thank you.